Debate resumes. Questions without notice. Senator McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Cormann. Yesterday, Mr Morrison finally apologised to victims of his illegal robo-debt scheme. What lessons has he learned?
The Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Well, it's very clear, consistent with the positions of governments of both political persuasions, that it is entirely appropriate for overpayment that have been made to be recovered. But of course that needs to be done and must be done, and the government would always intend it to be done in a way that is lawful. And in those circumstances, it was appropriate for the Prime Minister to make the statement he did to the House yesterday.
Senator McCarthy, a supplementary question.
2 weeks ago on Insiders, the Attorney-General refused to apologise to victims of the illegal robo-debt scheme. This week, this minister refused 9 opportunities to apologise. When did this minister first become aware of Mr Morrison's intention to apologise, and what changed?
Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr President. It's a matter of physical fact that I obviously only become aware of answers that are provided in the other place after they've been provided. So clearly the Prime Minister provided an answer yesterday to a question that was asked, and that is entirely appropriate.
Senator McCarthy, a final supplementary question.
Can Mr Morrison guarantee that he won't seek to reboot a rebadged robo-debt scheme to target vulnerable people in the middle of Australia's first recession in 29 years?
Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Well, what the government can guarantee is that we will continue to ensure that if people fail to come to an arrangement to settle their debts, the government has a responsibility to taxpayers to recover that money, as said by Tanya Plibersek. And of course, we know that Mr Shorten supported the automation of this process, and we know that Chris Bowen also supported that principle. I mean, I guess what we're hearing here is the Labor Party is essentially suggesting that when people are paid, when payments are made to people in excess of what they should have been, the Labor Party is essentially saying that the government should just walk away and leave it. We should just make overpayment after overpayment and not seek to. If that is the position of the Labor Party should spell it out.
Order. When I call senators to order, the informal rule is they must count to 10 before they start inappropriately interjecting again. Senator Davey.
My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport and Regional Development, Senator Cash. How is the Liberal and Nationals government driving economic recovery in our drought-affected regions by supporting the rebuilding of their businesses, their job markets and their confidence following the triple shock of bushfires, drought and the economic impacts of the COVID virus?
The Minister representing the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport and Regional Development, Senator Cash.
Thank you, Mr President, and I thank Senator Davey for her question and acknowledge all of us on the government side of the chamber, our commitment to rural and regional Australia and, of course, Australians who live there. Mr President, as we know, rural and regional Australians are incredibly resilient. This has been highlighted in particular because of the incidents of the recent droughts, the bushfires, the floods and, of course, the impact of COVID-19. But as we have all witnessed, rural and regional Australians, they have come through these significant challenges because of their fighting spirit. And it is a fighting spirit that Senator Davey would know cannot be underestimated. Mr President, the Liberal and National governments, we are proud to support rural and regional Australians. Why? Because it's in our DNA. Last week, the government announced that drought-affected communities across Australia will benefit from 163 local infrastructure and community building projects as part of a $207 million investment under Round 4 of the Australian Government's Building Better Regions Fund. Mr President, this fund provides grants of up to $10 million to local governments or incorporated not-for-profit organisations for infrastructure and community initiatives. The fund invests in community projects that create jobs, drive economic growth and build stronger regional and rural communities into the future. Mr President, the most recent round of the Building Better Regions Fund specifically focuses on helping communities that have been hardest hit by the crippling droughts. We know that many regional communities continue to face the effects of the prolonged dry spell. Our message as a government to them is clear. We understand that you are suffering and we understand the challenges that you are facing.
Senator Davey, a supplementary question.
Yes. Is the minister aware of any specific examples of the types of projects and jobs the Building Better Regions Fund supports?
Senator Cash.
Well, thank you, Mr President. And yes, I am. The government is continuing its long-standing, as I said, commitment to rural and regional Australia by making vital local projects a reality. And these vital local projects, what do? They create more jobs and they drive economic development across our regional and rural communities. Mr President, we have seen very, very good outcomes from the first 3 rounds of the Building Better Regions Fund, and we now want to build on these outcomes, including infrastructure projects that we are funding, the Tenterfield Water Treatment Plant Replacement Project in New South Wales, the construction of disability respite care units, so important for people in need of that respite care, in Goondiwindi in Queensland, and in my home state of Western Australia in Ravensthorpe, the construction of a multi-purpose centre and interactive cultural precinct. Again, job-creating projects to help these communities.
Senator Davey, a final supplementary question.
Thank you. And what additional support is the Liberal and Nationals government providing to our regions who've been affected by COVID-19 and the bushfires?
Senator Cash.
Well, again, Mr President, as I've said, the Liberal National Government supporting rural and regional Australians, it is in our DNA. And you'd be aware that as part of our economic recovery package for COVID-19, we have established a $1 billion COVID-19 relief and recovery fund to support regions, communities and industry sectors that have been disproportionately affected by the impact of COVID-19. Mr President, over $600 million has already been committed, supporting industries including aviation, agriculture, fisheries, tourism and the arts. And these include support for regional aviation under our $100 million Regional Airlines Funding Assistance, relief for federally managed fisheries through the waiving of nearly $10 million in levies. Mr President, the Liberal National Government, we understand the impact of these occurrences on rural and regional Australia, and we will continue to support them.
Senator Kitching.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister for Aged Care and Senior Australians, Senator Colbeck. Why is the government making older Australians wait twice as long for their bills, for cards from their grandchildren and for letters from their doctors at a time when COVID makes the post an even more essential service and lifeline for older Australians?
The Minister for Aged Care and Senior Australians, Senator Colbeck.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Mr President. And the opposition might like to cheer a little bit. They could have asked a question about Australia Post of the Minister representing the Minister for Communications. It might have been a good idea,
Order.
Mr President. So, but I am, Mr President, I am happy to provide.
Order. I've got Senator Wong on a point of order.
Well, point of order. We did think that perhaps the Minister for Seniors might actually want to be interested in the experience of older Australians.
That's not a point of order. Senator Wong, that's a point of debate. That's not a point of order. Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. And the Morrison government, Mr President, is helping Australia Post provide Australians with important services during. Well, Mr President, last time I looked to one of the consistent interjectors in the place, older Australians are Australians. Last time I had a look, and so when we're assisting Australians, we're also assisting senior Australians by helping Australia Post to provide Australians with the important services they need during COVID-19. And Mr President, the COVID-19 pandemic has intensified a number of existing trends. with letter volumes declining and parcel volumes jumping. Parcel volumes are up 64% in April year-on-year and letter volumes down 36% year-on-year. 200,000 new households are shopping online. In response to Australia Post's request, Mr President, the government has temporarily adjusted elements of the Australian Postal Corporation Performance Standard Regulations 2019.
Order. Senator Kitching on a point of order.
My point of order is relevance, Mr President. The question, there was not a preamble. The question was, why is the government making older Australians wait twice as long when during a pandemic, the post becomes a more essential service?
I was hearing Senator Colbeck address Australia Post directly in that part of the answer. I will listen carefully, but I believe that's relevant to the question if he was addressing the matter of Australia Post, but I'll listen exceptionally carefully. Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. And these changes are temporary and effective until the 30th of June 2021 and will be reviewed before the end of the year. This flexibility, Mr President, to retrain and deploy its workforce to support parcel delivery. Around 600 new roles have been created to assist Australia Post to meet the increased demand for parcel delivery.
Order, Senator Colbeck. Senator Kitching, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Senator Fierravanti-Wells has raised concerns that the government did not consult with Australia Post employees or people who use the service. What efforts did this minister make to consult with older Australians about the government's proposed changes to service requirements?
Senator Colbeck.
Mr President, this government has worked assiduously over recent months to assist all Australians to deal with the global health pandemic, which is COVID-19. And a range of measures have been introduced, including working with Australia Post to ensure that Australia Post can manage the increased demand that is required as a result of change in Australians' habits through being—
Order. Senator Colbeck. Senator Wong on a point of order.
Direct relevance. We actually asked this minister about his engagement. What consultation, as the minister responsible for senior Australians, did he engage in about the proposed changes to service arrangements?
On the point of order, Senator Wong raises a legitimate point about direct relevance in this case. However, I will be slightly broader in my interpretation of it, because that was the second part of the question. The first part did refer to consultation more generally. To be directly relevant, it is my view that a minister could be directly relevant while talking about consultation about this change, not just that part of the question. But direct relevance is tighter than broadly the old definition of broad relevance, so I call Senator Colbeck to continue with that in mind.
Thank you, Mr President. Can I just reject the core basis of the allegation that the opposition is making about that we're trying to make people wait longer for the services they're receiving? We've done no such thing at any point. In fact, this government, all through the period of the COVID-19 outbreak, has done everything it can to accommodate changes that have occurred, accommodate the changes that have had to have been made because of the incidence of COVID-19.
Senator Kitching, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. It is estimated that the government's plans will put 1 in 4 Australia Post jobs in limbo, many in the regions. Why is the government threatening the livelihoods of thousands of Australians during Australia's first recession in 29 years?
Senator Colbeck.
Mr President, can I again reject the assertions made in the question, in the question from Senator Kitching with respect to the government's actions? The government has been working to facilitate changes that have occurred in the economy as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. It's put some temporary measures in place with respect to Australia Post to assist it to meet increased demand for parcels, measures that will be reviewed at an appropriate period of time. So, Mr President, the Labor Party can scaremonger all they like. We have done no such thing as try and make people wait longer for their parcels. We've tried to accommodate the system to cater for the fact that there's increased demand because of people being isolating during COVID-19. So I reject any assertions from the opposition that they might make that we've been doing anything other than trying to assist Australians manage their way through the COVID-19 outbreak.
Senator Waters.
Thank you very much, President. My question is to the Leader of the Government representing the Prime Minister. Today it's reported that 5 of the 6 COVID commissioners that are advising how to rebuild after the pandemic have refused to make public their declarations about conflicts of interest. But the members of the Manufacturing Task Force of the COVID Commission don't even have to disclose their conflicts of interest, even to the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet. And yet one of the members, James Fazzino, is not only a director of APA Group, but holds around $350,000 worth of their shares. That company will build the pipeline to the Narrabri gas fields, and guess what? The task force strongly recommends that that very gas pipeline be supported by government. Will the Prime Minister now require the financial interests of all task force members to be disclosed, or do you not even care anymore about how in the pocket of the coal, oil and gas industry the government is?
The Leader of the Government, Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I completely reject that final assertion, which is wrong and which is offensive. Furthermore, the members of the National COVID Coordination Commission are distinguished Australians, and the Prime Minister expects them, of course, to manage any conflicts appropriately, and we're very confident that they will.
Senator Waters, a supplementary question.
Yes, thank you, President. Firefighters with decades of experience working around the Narrabri coal seam gas site in the Pilliga Forest are terrified of the increased fire risk from gas flaring, particularly as climate change dries the surrounding bush, while farmers are terrified of the 850 wells that threaten their water supplies in the Great Artesian Basin. Will you listen to them or to Santos, because they've donated more than $500,000 to the Liberal and National parties?
Okay. Senator Waters, partly because of the almost disorderly imputation towards the end, I'm going to give the minister an opportunity to respond to that claim you made, but that is outside what I would interpret to be a supplementary question of a traditional nature, because I couldn't hear of a particular link of it to the first question. But I'm going to give the minister an opportunity to respond, given the claim you made and the assertion you made at the end.
Well, again, and we get used to these sorts of outrageous statements from that corner of the chamber, sadly, in more recent times. I miss Senator Di Natale being in that front chair, I've got to say. But having rejected the offensive assertion at the end, the supplementary question, which is not a supplementary question, is based on an assumption that we have made certain decisions which we haven't made in relation to considerations which either haven't been finalised or haven't been put forward even to government. So, I mean, you're getting way ahead of yourself, and in getting ahead of yourself, you are being incredibly inappropriate in the way you are making imputations against the government.
Senator Waters, a final supplementary question.
Yes, thanks, President. This question is also about gas and donations. Greenhouse gas emissions from gas extraction have grown 73% in the last 5 years. Over the same time, there's been 3 major bleaching events on the Great Barrier Reef. Gas is toxic for our climate. Do you prioritise a handful of jobs for your donors, or countless species and the 60,000 Queenslanders and Australians that rely on a healthy Great Barrier Reef for their livelihood?
Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I tell you what we prioritise. We prioritise the national interest. We prioritise the public interest. We prioritise jobs. We prioritise opportunity for Australians to get ahead. And you know what? We're doing so in a way that is absolutely committed to strong environmental protection, strong environmental standards, but we will ensure that we pursue environmental protections in a way that is economically responsible. Because, and you know what, when you are here sort of now trying to say that gas is a terrible thing. Australian gas can help reduce global greenhouse gas emissions by, in particular, when it displaces other more polluting energy sources. I mean, this proposition somehow that we ought to demonise any form of Australian-produced energy source, I mean, it's just ridiculous. You go to the next election demonising gas production when that's one of our very important sectors in our economy, making a productive and positive contribution to environmental protection. You go right ahead. We'll go with our set of more balanced policy.
Time for the answers expired. Senator Gallagher. Gallagher.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Cormann. Minister, during your time as Finance Minister, you've referred specifically to $667 billion in government debt as being, amongst other things, unacceptable, unsustainable, a mess and a disaster. Minister, what is the amount of gross government debt today?
Minister representing the Treasurer,
Thank
Senator
you very
Cormann.
much, Mr. President. And you are quite right. You are quite right. That is precisely what I have said in the past. And that is the trajectory that a disastrous Labor government put Australia on between 2007 and 2013. Because when we came into government, we inherited a rapidly deteriorating budget position. Remember those 11 weeks between Labor's last budget and their last economic update?
Senator
$33 billion.
Senator Cormann, Senator Wong, I have Senator Gallagher on her feet with a point of order.
Point of order is not only relevance but also understanding Order 73.4 that the answer should not be debated, Mr President, but the question was very straightforward. What is the amount of gross government debt today?
And the preface, to be fair, Senator Gallagher, contained assertions about quotations you used of the minister. He is allowed to directly address those and be directly relevant. There is an opportunity to debate the sufficiency or otherwise of answers after question time. Senator Cormann. Order.
We are tabling this afternoon an updated statement on Australian government debt, and now, given the question has been asked, I'll table it now. So I'll make sure that. And here we are. Let me tell you, it is much less than it would have been if we hadn't fixed your budget mess. It is much less than it would have been if we hadn't fixed your budget mess. Because you know what? We are in the middle of a pandemic. Everyone other than the Labor Party understands this. Yes, we've had to spend a lot of money in the last few months in order to support the economy, to support business, to support jobs, to support those Australians who lost their job. And there is a context to this. But let me tell you, we went into...
Sorry, Senator Keneally, can I say something before I take your point of order? When I can't hear Senator Cormann about 3 metres from me, there's a serious problem with noise. So I'm going to call everyone to order on the matter of noise, and I'll call Senator Keneally on the point of order I assume she's about to raise.
Thank you, Mr President. It is direct relevance. The minister says he has the answer. He's unwilling to say it out loud.
That's not a point of order. Senator Keneally, please resume your seat. Please resume your seat. I am not in a position to rule on the relevance or otherwise of an answer I was struggling to hear over my own voice and probably 50 members of this chamber. Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Debt is much less than it would have been if we had not fixed Labor's budget mess. The Labor Party at the same time accuses us of cuts that are too hard. Then they say we should spend more on everything, and then they complain that the debt is too high. Let me tell you, the debt is much lower than it would have been under your government.
Senator Watt.
Under our government,
Senator Watt in particular.
We have reduced your unsustainable spending growth. When you oppose us every step of the way, and Australia went into this pandemic in a stronger fiscal position as a result of the work we did, and the Australian people know it, which is why they voted against you at the last election.
Order. Senator Wong, Senator Gallagher, who's on her feet. Order on my right and my left. Order. I'll call when order. Senator Gallagher.
Thank you, Mr President. For the benefit of senators, as the minister won't say it, I will say the number. It's $673.4 billion today.
Order.
Minister, can you confirm that gross...
Sorry, Senator Gallagher, please. It is your own colleagues, Senator Gallagher, that are preventing me hear your question, which will make it hard to rule on the likely points of order. Senator Gallagher.
Thank you. Minister, can you confirm that gross debt has increased by $393 billion on your watch, and that a staggering $288 billion of this was incurred before the COVID-19 borrowings began?
Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I can confirm that debt continued to increase because of the spending growth trajectory that Labor had locked into legislation when we came into government. And that the debt grew by less as a result of the work that we did, And I can also confirm that the Labor Party clearly has been living under a rock because they don't understand why we've been forced to spend as much as we have in recent times. And let me ask the Labor Party, which program do you think we should scrap? JobKeeper or JobSeeker? Should we cut the JobSeeker payments in half? Is that what you're suggesting? Because that is the implication of your question, is that you don't want us to spend the money we're spending on supporting business, on supporting jobs, on supporting the economy. You are completely out of touch, and the Australian people know it.
It's probably. We're about to prove, Senator Wong, we seem to be proving why we don't sit Fridays. Can I ask senators to at least take a breath? I am struggling to hear Senator Cormann's rather booming voice. Senator Gallagher.
Thank you, Mr. President. As the Finance Minister, who has now delivered 6 budget deficits and more than doubled the debt, would you describe today's gross government debt figure as unacceptable, unsustainable, a mess and a disaster?
Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The Labor Party left a mess. We put the country on a stronger fiscal foundation trajectory for the future. Senator Wong talked about spending. Let me tell you, spending as a share of GDP was heading way beyond. We brought spending as a share of GDP down below the long-term average. You were running it past 30% as a share of the economy, according to the intergenerational report. Let me tell you, the Labor Party position is completely inconsistent. They are arguing for more spending, fewer cuts, but somehow think that that is going to lead to less debt. Well, let me tell you, your positions of fewer cuts and higher spending would lead to higher debt. Like, that is basic mathematics. And I know that that is not something that the Labor Party understood in government. That is not something that the Labor Party understood in government, which is why when we came into government, we inherited a seriously, rapidly deteriorating budget position. I mean, your revenue forecasts were based on absolute, I was going to say something rude. Unreliable assumptions.
Time for the answer has expired. Order. Senator Hanson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. My question is to the Finance Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Cormann. Minister, the Treasurer approves 99.9% of all acquisition proposals that are first considered by the Foreign Investment Review Board. On those rare occasions when the Treasurer says no to foreign investment, he must find the proposed investment would be contrary to the national interest. The current legal framework, which can stop foreign ownership of critical or essential Australian assets, does not include the ownership of surface or groundwater. As a result of unlimited amount of water can be foreign-owned in Australia, at the end of 2018, the ATO reports 10% of all water entitlements in Australia are in foreign hands. Minister, is there any percentage of foreign ownership of water that would cause the government to consider it contrary to the national interest?
Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I thank Senator Hanson for that question. The first point I would make is that Australia does rely on foreign investment in order to reach and meet our economic growth opportunities. We are a capital importer in order to develop our economy, and though it is important that any foreign investment is not contrary to the national interest, and we've got a well-established framework in place to review foreign investment proposals to ensure that they are not contrary to the national interest. I mean, that scheme broadly has been in place since 1975. In more recent times, a number of reforms have been announced in relation to this, fundamentally to, I guess, strengthen the level of scrutiny in the context of relevant proposals coming forward. We've made some temporary adjustments in the context of the COVID-19 crisis to ensure that Australian businesses at this difficult time were protected from the threat of inappropriate foreign takeovers at a time of comparative weakness and challenge. And we've also recently made some very significant reform announcements in relation to national security sensitive businesses. And critical infrastructure is, of course, one of the areas also that we've put some additional safeguards and powers for the Treasurer into this framework. I don't believe it would be useful to provide arbitrary targets around what would be or would not be a desirable level of foreign investment in relation to a particular asset class. I think we've got to determine on whether or not there is a particular reason why a particular investment would be contrary to the national interest, and ultimately there is a high level of discretion for the Treasurer to make relevant judgments in this place. But let me just conclude on this point. Foreign investment is very important for our future economic growth and success and for the opportunity.
Order, Senator Cormann. Senator Hanson, a supplementary question.
Thank you. In 2014-15, DFAT and the ABS compared majority foreign-owned business with Australian business and found over 50% of wholesale businesses, 40% of manufacturing, 36% of mining, 25% of electricity, gas, water and waste services in Australia are foreign-owned. Is there any level of foreign ownership contrary to the national interest in any essential industry or service that would concern this government, and if so, what percentage would that be?
Order, Senator Hanson. Senator
thank you very much, Mr. President. Look, I'm not aware of the sources of the data that Senator Hanson is quoting there. I'm happy to review and engage in a conversation in relation to these matters. What I would say is that foreign investment contributing to the growth of businesses around Australia and the growth of jobs around Australia is something that helps provide increased opportunity for Australians to get ahead, for Australians to get a job, get a better job, pursue a career, and that is something that is very much in our national interest.
Senator Hanson, final supplementary question.
Thank you. On the 1st of January 2020, China introduced its foreign investment law based on a negative list of industries, provinces and cities where no foreign investment is permitted. Where foreign investment is permitted, a Chinese company must have a controlling interest. Will the government introduce a similar approach for the Chinese investment in Australia?
Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. That is not something that we're considering. I mean, we've recently announced the most substantial reforms to our foreign investment review arrangements in nearly 50 years. We do think it's important for us to continue to facilitate foreign investment into Australia as long as it's not contrary to the national interest. And we do believe that the framework that we have in place has stood Australia in good stead.
Senator Fawcett. Order. Senator Fawcett.
Thanks, Mr. President.
Senator
My question is for Senator Reynolds, the Minister for Defence. Minister, could you outline to the Senate the importance to Australia's national security of a submarine capability, and in that context the importance of Project C-1000, the future submarine?
The Minister for Defence, Senator Reynolds.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator Fawcett, one for the question and two for your enduring passion and commitment to this important capability for our nation. The first responsibility of any Australian government is to keep Australia and Australians safe. That's why the Morrison government is investing over $200 billion to deliver the modern defence force our nation needs. This government recognises that the security dynamics in our region are deteriorating, and we must invest in Australia's naval capability to address these challenges. Highly capable maritime forces are vital to our defence strategy, and none more so than from submarines. By 2035, we estimate that we will have over 300 submarines operating in our region. And as a maritime nation, our future prosperity depends on a stable, rules-based order and the free flow of goods and services across our region through international sea lines of communication. This government's Australian naval shipbuilding enterprise is unprecedented in both scale and ambition. In Australia, we are simultaneously building 5 separate classes of new vessels, including highly complex submarines and frigates. In total, we have commissioned 63 Australian-built naval vessels. 6 have already been delivered and 9 more are currently under construction. For the Hunter-class anti-submarine warfare frigates and the Arafura-class offshore patrol vessels, we have adopted ambitious but deliverable schedules for design and for construction. Not only has this saved Australian jobs, but is also creating many thousands more for many decades to come. All Australians have so much to be proud of in this truly national endeavour, and it is time to talk up our nation's achievements and not undermine
Senator
them.
Reynolds. Senator Fawcett, a supplementary question.
Thanks, Mr President. Minister, could you outline the steps the government is taking to keep Project C1000 on schedule?
Senator Reynolds.
Thank you, Senator Fawcett, and thank you, Mr President. The 2016 Defence White Paper stated that the future submarines would likely enter service from the early 2030s. And let me make it very clear to everybody in this chamber and to all Australians that the future submarine program is on track to meet this timeframe. Our current Collins-class submarines are a highly capable and potent national asset. They are halfway through their life and are being constantly upgraded right here in Australia to ensure that they remain regionally superior until the introduction of the attack-class submarine in the early 2030s. The competitive evaluation process that was completed in 2016 allowed this government to make a fully informed decision to build 12 new regionally superior submarines in Australia, because that process found that there were no military off-the-shelf submarines internationally that met our very unique requirements. And can I say again, this is being delivered on track and on time.
Senator Fawcett, a final supplementary question.
Thanks, Mr President. Minister, could you outline to the Senate the steps that the government is taking to keep Project C1000 on budget?
Senator Reynolds.
Thank you again, Mr President. Again, can I be very, very clear about this project to all in this chamber? There is no blowout to the cost of the future submarine project. There is no cost blowout to the future submarine project. When we announced the program in April 2016, the estimated cost for acquisition in 2016 dollars was $50 billion. There has been no change to this cost in constant dollar terms. The future submarine program will run well into the 2050s, and the use of constant dollars allows for a consistent comparison of purchasing power over the life of the project. The deliberate conflation by Labor of constant costs with outturn costs, which take into account inflation and exchange rate, is incredibly misleading and incredibly disappointing for a great Australian project. To put this very simply, comparing constant and outturn dollars does not represent a cost increase.
Time has expired. Senator McKim.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Home Affairs, Senator Cash. Minister, I refer you to the ongoing situation at Kangaroo Point in Brisbane, where your government is trying to force refugees and people seeking asylum from the so-called alternative place of detention into an actual immigration detention facility. I've spoken personally to one of your innocent prisoners who was told directly he was being forcibly moved because he has spoken out publicly about the injustices he's faced over the last nearly 7 years. Is it true that you are specifically moving people who've spoken out in the media or who have otherwise protested against their detention in order to silence their dissent?
The Minister representing the Minister for Home Affairs, Senator Cash.
Thank you, Mr President, and I would thank Senator McKim for the question, but unfortunately the entire premise of the question was untrue, so it's difficult to do that. So I completely reject, Senator McKim, the premise of your question, and the answer is quite clearly no. Can I also point out in relation to the Kangaroo Point alternative place of detention, because Senator McKim, you frequently refer to these places as places in which prisoners are held. The Kangaroo Point alternative place of detention is actually, for the benefit of those listening in, the Kangaroo Point Central Hotel and Apartments. That is the place that you are actually referring to. And in relation to the protest that is being currently held
at the Kangaroo Point Central Hotel and Apartments, otherwise the Kangaroo Point Alternative Place of Detention. Can I just advise, for the benefit of the Chamber, that, Mr President, decisions to move detainees between these facilities are made independently by the Australian Border Force. And as Senator McKim would know, these decisions are made for a number of reasons, including to manage numbers in each facility, for health reasons, and to ensure the safety of detainees, staff and the public. There are protests outside the Brisbane facility. Now, for the benefit again of Senator McKim, the man at the centre of these protests, oh goodness gracious, is Brisbane Greens councillor Jonathan Sri. Mr President, for the record, Mr Sri, or Brisbane Greens councillor Jonathan Sri's actions are completely, totally and utterly unacceptable for a public official. And I would hope that Senator McKim would agree.
Senator McKim, order on my right. Senator McKim on a supplementary question.
Well, thank you, President. I congratulate Mr Sri for his recent actions and his outstanding result in recent elections, I might add. Minister, how is Home Affairs deciding who to move?
Senator Cash.
Well, Mr President, if Senator McKim had listened, which clearly he didn't, to my first answer, he would have heard me say decisions to move detainees are made independently by the Australian Border Force. But let me just—
I've got Senator McKim on a point of order. Senator McKim.
Thank you, President. Point of order is relevance. What we got is a generic answer to an absolutely specific question in regards to the actual circumstances that are pertaining right now as we debate this matter. The question is, how has Home Affairs decided who to move specifically in regards to this situation?
The second part of your question I have written down is, how is Home Affairs deciding who to move? That followed a preamble that you're responding to the minister's previous concluding comments. Now, the minister was speaking for 10 seconds and had uttered one sentence. That sentence did actually refer to the movement of people. I can't make a ruling on direct relevance. I cannot make a ruling on direct relevance 11 seconds in and one sentence in. I can't instruct a minister how to answer a question, but I do remind senators that ministers can be directly relevant, responding to preambles as well as questions. Senator Cash.
Thank you. And I would like now to address Senator McKim's preamble, because in that preamble he actually congratulated Greens councillor Jonathan Sri. Well, let me tell the chamber what Greens councillor Jonathan Sri has been doing. What he is doing is inciting a protest whereby people are jumping on vehicles, and a delivery driver was confronted by protesters who insisted on searching his vehicle. Protesters, and I again note the congratulations of Senator McKim, are also breaching, colleagues, social distancing restrictions. Now, what is that doing? What is that doing? Risking the spread of COVID-19, not only amongst the community, Senator McKim, but amongst the people that you are allegedly standing here and expressing fake concern.
Order, Senator Cash. Time has expired. Senator McKim, I believe, has a further supplementary.
I do, President. Thank you, and I will put this with zero preamble. Minister, how has Home Affairs decided exactly who to move from Kangaroo Point to Baita?
Senator Cash.
Thank you, Mr President. And again, Senator McKim, I will repeat the answer to both the primary question to the first supplementary, which is now the same for the second supplementary.
Order. Senator McKim. On a point of order?
Yes, again, President. The point of order is relevance. This is farcical. My question was very specific, and a generic answer does not answer the question and ought not be considered relevant to the question.
Well, what ought or may not be considered relevant is the rules are set by the Senate. Now, the Senate minister was alluding to a comment that the minister was about to make. The minister has to be strictly and directly relevant to what you raised, which was a very specific question. But I do not have the ability to instruct a minister how to answer the question. There's an opportunity after question time to debate it. But it was a specific question, and I will constrain the minister's comments to be directly relevant to the terms and the question you asked. Senator Cash.
And as I stated, decisions to move detainees between facilities are made independently by the Australian Border Force.
Senator McKim.
Order. Once again, that is an irrelevant response, Senator, President, not relevant to the question.
Well, no, Senator McKim. Firstly, the minister has concluded her answer, so I can't take a point of order. Secondly, I do not believe that answer, despite the fact that you consider it to be unsatisfactory, is not directly relevant, because it goes to the movement of people. You are asking for the content of an answer. You can debate that answer, but I cannot instruct a minister that that statement is not directly relevant. There's a time to debate it, and that is for others to judge. Senator Watt.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Drought, Agriculture and Emergency Management, Senator Ruston. Yesterday, the government announced that it was committing $11.5 million to mental health support for emergency services workers who were impacted by the recent devastating bushfire season. Yesterday's announcement was in fact just a re-announcement from the $16 million in mental health funding the government announced in January. Why has the government's mental health support for emergency services workers to date been 2 press releases and not a single dollar spent?
The Minister representing the Minister for Agriculture, Drought and Emergency Management, Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President, and thank you very much to the Senator for his question and his ongoing interest in the bushfire recovery and helping our bushfire-affected communities across Australia, which I can say that the federal government, the coalition government, the Morrison government is absolutely committed to helping Australians that have been impacted by the bushfire, and which is why we continue to invest money in this recovery. And we also acknowledge, as you do as well, Senator, that the bushfires in 2019-20 have taken a very serious toll on the mental health of Australians. It's taken a very traumatic emotional toll on those people that were infected in those communities. I know firsthand from the communities that I have had involvement with in South Australia that it was a very tragic and terrifying time, and the impact lingers on, exacerbated even further by the fact that they have now had to contend with the implications and the consequences of the actions that have had to be taken around the coronavirus pandemic. The government has committed over $100 million in mental health supports for emergency personnel, for individuals and communities impacted by the Black Summer bushfires. These include $76 million for a bushfire recovery mental health package announced on the 12th of January this year, and that package included free access to counselling in bushfire-affected areas, Medicare rebated psychological support, including via telehealth, which is particularly relevant given the COVID crisis, money for primary health networks for additional services and to administer grants into local communities, and specific support for emergency service workers and their families. In response to the need for more community-based support, the government has since announced an additional $13.5 million for primary care into the primary health networks. And this is very, very specific.
Order, Senator Ruston. Senator Watt, a supplementary question.
Can the minister confirm that yesterday's $11.5 million announcement represents a $4.5 million cut to the $16 million already announced for mental health support for the same emergency services workers?
Senator Ruston.
Well, in direct answer to your question, no, I can't, Senator Watt, and I'm not going to. But what I would say to this chamber, following the question that I received yesterday, is, Senator Watt, you can be very, very loose with the facts. Very loose with the facts.
Order.
Yesterday you came in this place and you accused us of only providing support, and I think you quoted a number of 4% of Australians living in bushfire-affected communities have been able to access government support. What you failed to mention yesterday, Senator Watt, was
order, Senator. I've got Senator Wong on a point of order.
Mr President, how is this directly relevant?
Well, I don't have a habit of, as they do in the other place, of interrupting ministers' answers. I wait for senators to call for order.
I'm posing the question. This is, if the minister wishes to make, she has plenty of opportunities as a minister. She wants to debate Senator Watt. I'm happy to stay and watch that. But if she could answer this question, not argue yesterday's question, which she was unable to answer. I'm pleased you found your brief since yesterday.
The minister is entitled to challenge the assertions or assumptions in a question. If I could finish, the minister is entitled to challenge assertions or assumptions in the question, but must remain directly relevant to the terms of the question. I'm listening quite carefully, and I will continue to do so. The answer must pertain to the announcement and/or challenging or addressing any other claims contained in the question. Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President, and I will draw the senator's attention to the first sentence that I uttered after he asked the question when I answered the question. But if they don't like the idea that I come in here and actually suggest that I've got evidence that Senator Watt is somewhat loose with his facts, well, I'm sorry about that. But we'll move on to the bushfire crisis that we're talking about at the moment. And in 1920, the bushfire crisis has absolutely exemplified.
Order, Senator Ruston. Senator Watt, a final supplementary. Order. Senator Ruston. Senator Ruston and Senator Wong. Please. It's only 10 minutes to go, Senator Ruston and Senator Wong. Senator Cormann on a point of order.
Interjections are disorderly, and the worst culprit when it comes to constant and relentless interjecting and personal interjections as well is the Leader of the Opposition. And I ask you to call it to order.
I have said before that there is no one in this chamber with a halo when it comes to interjections, but I do ask that Senator Wong, please, while I'm ruling, order. There are common interjections across this end of the chamber that I can hear. They are all disorderly, and we'll continue question time with Senator Watt's question if they cease. Senator Watt, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. I'm happy to table the article that cites the 4% figure after question time. In January, Mr Morrison promised that relief would be immediate. Why did the government go 5 months without spending a single dollar from the $16 million announced in January for mental health support for emergency services workers? Why is this government constantly prioritising marketing and re-announcements over the needs of people affected by the bushfires?
Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much. Well, I obviously completely and utterly reject the premise of the comments that Senator Watt just said, and that this government would be prioritising anything over what is tremendously important about dealing with the fallout and the impact on the mental health of Australians who have been impacted by bushfires is an outrageous comment. We are absolutely committed to supporting particularly our emergency service workers who spent many weeks, many more weeks than we've ever seen before, out fighting fires, and the impact on the mental health of those emergency workers, the post-traumatic stress disorders, the mental illnesses, and sadly in some cases the suicides, is something that this government takes very seriously. And we remain absolutely committed to help these people over the longer term, to make sure that they have the support that they need. Well, Senator Watt, as you would well know—
Order. Senator Wong. Sorry, Senator Cormann.
I know it's Friday afternoon. Everybody's perhaps getting a bit tired, but interjections are disorderly, and I ask you to call on opposition senators to desist interjecting.
Interjections are always disorderly. I make the plea as I have all afternoon. Senator Ruston, the time has expired. Senator Askew.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Senator Payne. Can the minister advise the Senate on how the COVID-19 pandemic is impacting our region and how Australia is responding through our Partnership for Recovery strategy?
Minister for Foreign Affairs, Senator Payne.
Thank you very much, Mr President, and I thank Senator Askew for the question and for her interest in our international affairs, because we know the COVID-19 challenge has brought a range of difficulties to our region. Health systems and livelihoods have been put seriously at risk. With our Pacific Island neighbours, together we acted decisively to contain the spread of the virus, and we stood together in our responses. We're working with partners in the Pacific Island Forum to support a Pacific humanitarian pathway to move essential humanitarian supplies and workers. I'll meet again next week with my counterparts in the Ministerial Action Group on implementation of the pathway. And I really appreciate the support of the Tuvalu Foreign Minister, Simon Coffey, and the PIF Secretary-General, Dame Meg Taylor, in our joint statement about the pathway on the 1st of June. Framing our response, as the senator said, we released Australia's new development strategy as Partnerships for Recovery, focusing on the Pacific, Timor-Leste and Indonesia, and concentrating on 3 areas: health, stability and economic recovery. This entails a pivot of our development effort towards the immediate needs of partners in our region. Mr. President, we're also making important contributions to the global response and to the recovery, committing $352 million at the European Union Conference for Vaccines, Diagnostics and Treatment, and $300 million to Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, which was indeed recognised today by a motion in this chamber, and I acknowledge the support of the chamber for that. How this region comes through this crisis matters to all of us. The growth, the stability of the Indo-Pacific has provided the foundations for our own security and prosperity. And most importantly, we recognise that Australia can only do this with partners in partnership.
Senator Askew, a supplementary question.
Thank you. Can the minister advise how Australia's work with its Pacific and Southeast Asian partners specifically prioritises the region's economic recovery?
Senator Payne.
Thank you, Mr. President. The pandemic is having a significant economic impact. The International Monetary Fund predicts growth in Pacific Island countries will be between 0 and -12% this year. For example, up to 70,000 tourism jobs are at risk in Fiji alone. In Southeast Asia, economic growth is stalling after 5 decades of rapid expansion. We're working closely with partners, with international financial institutions, to forge pathways to economic recovery by keeping markets and businesses functioning, avoiding government debt distress and strengthening human capital and job creation. Also in Indonesia, for example, we're providing technical advice on economic stimulus and social protection measures. In the Pacific, we're delivering immediate financing support to strengthen our neighbours' capacities to provide essential services to their communities.
Senator Askew, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can the minister update the Senate on Australia's engagement with Pacific women through the challenges of COVID-19?
Senator Payne.
Mr. President, on the 29th of May, I was absolutely honoured to co-convene a Pacific Women Leaders WebEx forum with the Deputy Prime Minister of Samoa, Fiame Naomi Matafa, to discuss the impact of COVID-19 on women's health, economic security and personal safety. 30 Pacific parliamentary and civil service women leaders from 18 countries, an impressive meeting in anyone's terms, agreed to work together to explore new ways to enhance the well-being of women and girls. Contributions canvassed economic impact, family concerns, women's safety, jobs, cultural issues, thought-provoking and vital for shared understanding of the challenges. Our Partnerships for Recovery strategy is underpinned by a focus on the most vulnerable and includes addressing gender-specific impacts of COVID-19. Australia stands with Pacific women at this time.
Senator Chisholm.
Thanks, Mr. President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Cormann. Yesterday, the member for Leichhardt called for an extension of JobKeeper beyond September for Far North Queensland. He said, and I quote, "I'm confident it will happen." Has Mr Ensch been given any commitment by the Prime Minister about extending JobKeeper in Far North Queensland?
The Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. It sounds like a copy and paste from a question yesterday. I mean, it's Friday afternoon. The Labor Party has got other questions. The Labor Party has got other questions. Rinse and repeat.
Order. Senator Gallagher on a point of order.
Yes, Mr. President. My point of order is that if the Leader of the Opposition continues to replace substance with volume, you may need to revisit the social distancing policy in this chamber.
Senator Cormann.
I agree with Senator Gallagher's observations of the leader, on the Leader of the Opposition. Absolutely. I endorse them. I endorse them. I fully endorse them. And I understand that there's a great friendship between those two Labor senators from the great state of South Australia. great state of South Australia. Now, getting back to the question, if you ask the same question, then you get the same answer. Warren Entsch, the member for Leichhardt, is an outstanding member of Parliament. He does a great job, and the people in Leichhardt strongly support his efforts, standing up for his communities. But let me reassure Senator Chisholm, because I know he's concerned, we have not made any such commitment.
Senator Chisholm, a supplementary question.
Thanks, Mr President. This morning, the member for Braddon was asked if we will see separate rates of unemployment benefit in different parts of the country. He answered, and I quote, "It's being considered at the moment and we're not excluding anything." Has Mr Pearce been given any commitment by Mr Morrison about a higher rate of unemployment benefits for northern Tasmania?
Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr President. The member for Braddon, of course, is another outstanding Liberal representative fighting hard for the people of Braddon, and of course that is why they gave him their confidence at the last election. Let me also say that, of course, the government is considering on how we can provide the appropriate levels of support to Australians in need as we go through this COVID-19 impacted crisis impact on the economy. In relation to arrangements for job seeker and JobKeeper in particular, moving forward, we will continue to provide support, appropriate levels of support all around the country, and we will transition out of the current elevated levels of support in the right way at the appropriate time.
Senator Chisholm, a final supplementary question.
Yes, Mr President. On Tuesday, Senator Stoker criticised, and I quote, "endless subsidies paid for using money borrowed from future generations." Has Senator Stoker been given any commitment by Mr Morrison about government debt levels?
Senator
thank you very much, Mr President. It's great to see that Senator Chisholm goes through all these outstanding Liberal members and senators. We've got a few more. And Senator Stoker is, of course, absolutely right. We should absolutely minimise the burdens on future generations. And the absolute commitment that Senator Stoker has from the government, and every Australian has from the government, is that debt will always be lower than it would have been under the Labor Party. Debt will always be lower under the Liberal Party and the National parties than it would have been under the Labor Party. Because the Labor Party, they of course left behind a rapidly deteriorating budget position. They left behind ludicrous revenue assumptions, like $120 a tonne for iron ore, which meant that the revenue they assumed they would collect was way above anything that was ever going to be realistic, which is of course why, and then of course they locked in spending growth that was not affordable.
We're
and you know what
there.
We fixed Labor's budget mess, and we're in a better position today as a result of the work we did, and the Australian people know it. They know that you can't handle money.
Senator Cormann.
And I ask that further questions be placed in the notice paper.